My twin sister and I graduated from medical school at the exact same time, but when it came to our student loans, our parents paid off hers and completely ignored mine. It's a smarter investment, honey. That was the reason they gave me. When they threw a party to celebrate her financial freedom, they had no idea a much bigger announcement was coming. Dermatology is just a smarter investment, my mother said, her voice casual as she arranged flowers in a vase, not even bothering to look at me. That one sentence, delivered with all the emotional weight of a grocery list, felt like a physical blow. It was a cold, sharp thing that twisted something vital inside me, forcing me to question 2.5 decades of my life. I was standing in their pristine white kitchen, the air thick with the scent of lilies and unspoken rules, trying to make sense of the $400,000 chasm that had just opened between my sister and me. "Mom," I started, my voice shaking just slightly. "We both graduated with the same honors. We had the exact same grade point average. I don't understand why you and Dad would pay off all of Madison's loans and not even a penny of mine." My mother finally set down the flowers and turned to me, her expression a familiar, frustrating mix of pity and impatience. "Lauren," she sighed as if explaining something simple to a child. "Your sister doesn't have a powerful mentor like Dr. Albright looking out for her. You've always had these advantages." I almost choked on a laugh. Advantages? Dr. Susan Albright was the chief of surgery, and she was my mentor because I spent 80-hour weeks in her research lab while Madison was on ski trips in Vail with our parents. My so-called advantage was a cocktail of exhaustion and ambition, fueled by the bitter knowledge that my twin was receiving their unconditional support. "So, I'm being penalized for being self-sufficient?" I asked, the hurt sharpening my voice. My father, Michael, walked in right on cue, wrapping an arm around my mother's shoulders in a show of solidarity. "No one is penalizing you, Lauren. We're being logical. Your sister's career in dermatology is a safer bet. High return, low risk. Your path, cardiothoracic surgery, is, well, it's more of a passion project." A passion project. 10 years of relentless study, of sacrificing my social life, of pushing my mind and body to their absolute limits, all dismissed as a hobby. His words hung in the air, cold and transactional. They didn't see a daughter, they saw a portfolio. And I was the high-risk, low-yield stock they were about to dump. Sitting on the marble countertop was a thick, cream-colored envelope. Madison's debt-free celebration, their idea of course. They'd invited the entire world to witness this monument to their favoritism. The invitation was a public declaration that one daughter was a sound investment, and the other was a write-off. Tauwai. I fled to my tiny apartment, the one I could barely afford, their cold, calculated words echoing in the silence. The injustice of it all felt suffocating. It wasn't a new feeling, but it had never been this quantifiable. $400,000 was the price tag on their preference. I sank onto my worn-out sofa, the party invitation still clenched in my hand, and let the memories wash over me. It was a pattern, I realized, one that had been woven into the fabric of our lives for as long as I could remember. For our 16th birthday, Madison got a brand new Tesla, gleaming and white. I got a $100 gift card to a bookstore. The reasoning? Madison needed a reliable car to get to her many social events, while I just needed to get to the library and back. For her undergraduate graduation, they flew her to Paris for a month. For mine, they took me to a steakhouse downtown. They weren't cruel in an obvious way. It was a quiet, insidious form of neglect disguised as practicality. Madison was the golden child, the one whose path was paved with their money and adoration. She was bright, beautiful, and effortlessly charming, the daughter they could show off at country club dinners. I was the invisible child. The one who was too serious, too focused, the one they praised for her resourcefulness. A word that I now understood was just a euphemism for their neglect. They never had to worry about me, so they simply didn't. My achievements were met with a polite nod, my struggles with a dismissive wave. I was the low-maintenance daughter, and my reward for that was to be ignored. It was a classic toxic family dynamic, and for the first time I was seeing it with painful clarity. They hadn't just paid for Madison's education. They had invested in the daughter who reflected their own values back at them, easy, profitable, and uncomplicated. My ambition, my drive to enter a field as demanding as cardiothoracic surgery, wasn't something they could easily package and display. It was messy, difficult, and high stakes. It wasn't a good look for their family's brand. Just as the weight of it all threatened to crush me, my phone buzzed, a sharp, insistent sound that cut through my despair. It was a text from a number I knew by heart, a number that had become my lifeline over the past 2 years. Dr. Susan Albright. The message was short, direct, and crackling with energy, just like the woman herself. It read, "Lauren. Need to see you. Big news about the fellowship. My office tomorrow morning." I stared at the screen, a flicker of something electric cutting through the gloom. The fellowship. Hope, fierce and unexpected, began to push back against the despair. Maybe my parents' narrative wasn't the only one being written about me. The next morning I walked into Dr. Albright's office, a space that felt more like a command center than a doctor's lounge. It was the complete opposite of my parents' meticulously decorated home. Her walls weren't covered in family photos. They were covered in framed medical degrees, prestigious awards, and blueprints for surgical innovations. It was a room built on merit, not aesthetics. This was where my real validation came from. Dr. Albright looked up from a stack of files, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She was a force of nature, a woman who had shattered every glass ceiling in her field and then used the shards to build a ladder for people like me. "Lauren, sit," she said, gesturing to the leather chair opposite her desk. "I have some rather extraordinary news." My heart started hammering against my ribs. 4 months, my entire future had been hanging on a single application. The Harrington Surgical Fellowship. It was the holy grail for aspiring surgeons. Only one was awarded each year, and it was a career-making, life-changing honor. "The committee has made its decision," Dr. Albright said, her expression unreadable. I held my breath, the air in the room suddenly feeling thin. "They've selected you," she said, a slow, brilliant smile spreading across her face. "Congratulations, Dr. Hayes. You're the next Harrington Fellow." A tidal wave of relief, joy, and pure, unadulterated triumph crashed over me. I couldn't speak. All the sacrifices, all the nights I spent alone in the lab while my family was on vacation, all the times I was told my ambition was too much, it all culminated in this single perfect moment. "I don't know what to say," I finally stammered. "You earned it," Dr. Albright said, her tone firm, leaving no room for doubt. "Your research on myocardial regeneration was revolutionary." The committee was unanimous. But it wasn't just the prestige. The fellowship came with a package that made my head spin. A massive research stipend, a direct path to a leading surgical residency, and the most important part, $500,000. It included complete and total forgiveness of every dollar of my student loan debt. I was free. I would be debt-free not because of my parents' calculated generosity, but because of my own relentless hard work. "There's more," Dr. Albright continued, a sly twinkle in her eye. "I've been invited to your sister's celebration tonight. Apparently, your parents sent a courtesy invitation to all department heads. A perfect opportunity, don't you think?" My stomach lurched. "I don't know," I said, the thought of that party souring my victory. "It's supposed to be Madison's night. My parents would see it as me trying to steal her thunder." Dr. Albright leaned forward, her expression turning serious. "Lauren, I have seen how your family operates at hospital functions. I've heard the way they speak about you both. I understand your reluctance, but sometimes for a truth to be acknowledged, it must be made public." He was right. If I told them privately, they'd find a way to diminish it, to call it luck. But a public announcement from the chief of surgery herself? That was a different story. That was undeniable. I arrived at the party feeling like a soldier walking into enemy territory. My parents had rented out the city's most exclusive rooftop restaurant, and the place was dripping with money. A giant, professionally printed banner hung over the entrance, proclaiming in shimmering gold letters, "Congratulations, Dr. Madison Hayes." No mention of her twin, the other Dr. Hayes, who had graduated right alongside her. I smoothed down the simple black dress I wore, a stark contrast to the glittering gowns around me, and took a deep breath. This was Madison's night, I reminded myself. But as I stepped onto the terrace, the sheer scale of the favoritism was breathtaking. There were ice sculptures, a string quartet, and a slideshow of Madison's life playing on a giant screen. Madison at her prom, Madison on vacation, Madison accepting an award. I was a blurry figure in the background of a few photos, an incidental part of her story. The air was thick with the cloying scent of expensive perfume and social maneuvering. My parents were in their element, parading Madison around like a prized racehorse. They introduced her to hospital administrators, wealthy donors, and the dean of the medical school, Dr. Jennings. This was the pinnacle of their public performance, crafting the narrative of their perfect, successful daughter. But then something happened that I never expected. Madison broke away from a conversation with my father and rushed over to me, her expression a mixture of anxiety and relief. "Lauren, thank God you're here," she whispered, pulling me toward a quiet corner by the railing. "Aunt Carol has already asked me 3 times about my 5-year plan." I laughed, a genuine laugh that surprised me. "What did you tell her?" "That my 5-year plan involves not having to talk to Aunt Carol." She linked her arm through mine, her grip tight. "Seriously, it's insane. The banner? The slideshow? It's mortifying. And it's so unfair." The knot of resentment in my stomach began to loosen. She wasn't gloating. She was embarrassed. "We both graduated, Lauren. We both did the work. Why is this party only for me?" It felt like the first honest question she'd asked me in years. It was the first crack in the gilded cage they had built around her. For the first time, I didn't see the golden child. I saw my sister, another captive in our parents' carefully curated world. She wasn't the villain of my story, she was just the other character trapped in theirs. Before I could answer, our mother, Karen, appeared with 2 glasses of champagne. "Madison, darling, Dr. Jennings wants to talk to you about the dermatology residency program. Come along." She guided Madison away, then glanced back at me, her smile tight. "Lauren, could you be a dear and find the event coordinator? The canapes are running a bit low." And just like that, I was dismissed. Demoted from guest of honor's sister to unpaid event staff. But this time it didn't sting as much. Because Madison had seen it too. And that changed everything. The toasts began just as the sun set, casting a golden glow over the city. My father, Michael, stood, tapping a crystal glass with his spoon. His voice boomed across the terrace, filled with performative pride. "I want to thank you all for coming to celebrate our daughter, Madison. We've always seen our children as investments in the future, and I have to say, Madison has been our wisest, most profitable investment yet." The crowd applauded, a polite ripple of sound. I watched Madison, who squirmed in her seat, her face flushed with discomfort. My mother beamed beside her, soaking in the reflected glory. The wording was so deliberate, so cold. An investment. Not a daughter. Before my father could continue, Madison stood up. Her movement was abrupt, silencing the lingering applause. "Actually, Dad, I'd like to say something." She turned, and her eyes found mine across the crowded tables. Her gaze was steady, apologetic. "This whole celebration," she began, her voice clear and strong, "it feels wrong. It feels incomplete. Because I didn't do this alone. Lauren and I graduated together. We studied together. And honestly, she worked twice as hard because she did it all without the safety net I always had." A shocked silence fell over the party. My parents stared at her, their smiles frozen on their faces. "Madison," my mother hissed, a quiet, sharp warning. "This isn't the time or the place." "It's exactly the time," Madison shot back. "I can't stand here and accept praise that ignores my own sister. It has never been right." My throat tightened. After all these years, she was finally saying it. Publicly. Vindicating me in front of the very people my parents sought to impress. My father, ever the politician, recovered first. Of course, we're proud of both our girls," he said, his voice a little too loud, a little too jovial. "But tonight is about Madison's incredible accomplishment of being debt-free. An accomplishment you paid for, not one I earned," Madison countered. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. This was it. The great unraveling. It was in that perfect, suspended moment of chaos that Dr. Susan Albright chose to stand. "If I may," she said, her voice calm but carrying an authority that commanded instant attention. Her eyes swept over my parents, then landed on me with a small, encouraging smile. "This seems like the perfect moment to share some other wonderful news." My parents exchanged a nervous look. "News about Lauren, actually. Her research into myocardial regeneration has earned her this year's Harrington Surgical Fellowship." Gasps rippled through the audience. Heads turned. Dr. Jennings, the dean, leaned forward, his expression shifting from polite interest to genuine shock. "For those of you who may not be familiar," Dr. Albright continued, her voice ringing with pride, "the Harrington is the single most prestigious postgraduate award in the country. It comes with a $500,000 package including complete student loan forgiveness. The room erupted, not in polite applause, but in a genuine roar of admiration that was all for me. But Dr. Albright wasn't done. She held up a hand for silence, her eyes now fixed on my parents. A cold, hard glint had replaced their earlier warmth. "It's also interesting timing," she said, her voice dropping slightly, "because Mr. and Mrs. Hayes approached me just a few weeks ago. Not to ask how they could support Lauren's brilliant career, but to ask if I could use my influence to secure a residency spot for Madison." The final, devastating blow landed. The public image they had spent a lifetime curating was shattered in a single, perfectly delivered sentence. In the immediate aftermath, it was like a force field around my parents had collapsed. They were suddenly alone, isolated at their own party while I was surrounded. Colleagues, professors, even the dean, Dr. Jennings, crowded around me, shaking my hand, asking about my research, offering sincere congratulations. The validation was overwhelming, and it had nothing to do with my parents. It was entirely my own. Madison was the first one at my side, her eyes shining with tears. She threw her arms around me. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. "You deserved this more than anyone." "I only found out this morning," I told her. "I didn't want to ruin your party." She pulled back, shaking her head. "You didn't ruin it. You saved it. And you saved me." The next day my parents showed up at my apartment, their faces a mask of forced contrition. They came bearing a gift, a peace offering in a small, elegant box. "We've been thinking," my father started, his voice strained. "We know we haven't always been, for." Inside the box was an expensive watch. "We wanted to get you something to show how proud we are." I looked at the gift, then back at them, and for the first time I felt nothing but a calm, quiet pity. "I don't want this," I said, gently pushing the box back toward them. Their faces fell. "But why?" my mother asked, her voice trembling. "We love you." "This isn't about love," I explained, my voice steady. "It was never about me needing more help or Madison needing less. It was about your need to control a project. Madison was a project you could easily manage and show off. I was too independent, my ambitions didn't fit into the neat little box you built. You didn't hurt just me. You wounded both of us by casting us in those roles." They had no response. The truth finally spoken left them speechless. Weeks later I was packing the last of my boxes, preparing for my move. Madison was sitting on my floor helping me label everything. "I still can't believe they tried to use your mentor to get me a spot," she said, shaking her head. "All those years I thought I was the lucky one. But they weren't supporting me, they were making me dependent on them." I sat down next to her. "We know better now." She looked at me, a real smile reaching her eyes. "Dad is already telling anyone who will listen about his brilliant daughter, the Harrington Fellow, like he orchestrated the whole thing." I laughed, a genuine, carefree sound. "Let him. His opinion doesn't have the power to hurt me anymore." My sense of self-worth wasn't tied to their approval. It had been transferred to a healthier source: my own achievements and the respect of mentors like Dr. Albright. My future was no longer a reaction to my past. It was a blank page. As I taped up the last box, I felt a profound sense of peace. The weight I had carried for 26 years was finally gone. I was debt-free in every sense of the word. My sister and I were finally just sisters, not competitors. We were free to build our own relationship on our own terms. The road ahead was mine to create, and for the first time I felt ready.